Good. All right. So Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and 2. So I'm going to go over some of your comments. Some of you are already catching some interesting things that I'm going to go back to. So I'm just going to make a list, right, of some of the things that you guys have caught. This is mostly in chapter 2. Let's start with chapter 1. Ahmad made an interesting observation about the cyclical nature, right, that we have here. Instead of having a linear view of time, right, meaning we're progressing towards always new things and progress, and which is, by the way, the biblical time, right? Absolutely, the biblical is going towards the messianic era, right? Going towards a new world, so it's progressing. There is this idea of progress in the Hebrew Bible. Here we have just this circular, which Ahmed was like, well, that would be nice, right? Because it's like a renewal, right? Winter, spring. But then he's like, that doesn't seem to be the tone of Ecclesiastes, right? The feeling we get from this circular that we're going to study briefly today is stagnation, right? So Ecclesiastes, in a way, right, this is the first moment where he's breaking away from the Hebrew worldview, right, which is progressive, moving towards always something better. We're always becoming wiser or better people, right? We're growing. There's no growth here. It's kind of like the, what do you call this little animal, furry animal that runs in a little wheel? What's the name of that?
Hamster.
Hamster. Yes, he's saying we're just like hamsters, right? Just running, thinking we're going somewhere, but going nowhere. This is similar to if you read Albert Camus, right? The myth of Sisyphus. Same. A lot of connections, by the way, between Ecclesiastes and some of these existentialists, right? The myth of Sisyphus. This is the drama that is taking place in the myth of Sisyphus, right? And the Greek story of Sisyphus, right? This man or God, I don't know, condemned to push a stone up a mountain and then let it go down and then push it back up and let it, or Groundhog Day, American version, right? This is kind of like, I mean, if you've ever felt stuck in your life, you're right there in chapter 1. How many of you feel stuck right now? Put your hand in the screen. Right? Good. You're right there in chapter 1. This is where Ecclesiastes is like, I'm stuck. There's no way out. I am stuck in this. There's never gonna be a breakthrough. There's never gonna be something better. This is the moment. Remember, Ecclesiastes is meandering between depression and illumination, back to depression. This is one of the low points, right? Where he's saying, I feel stuck. We are all stuck, right? There's never gonna get better. Basically, that's what he's saying. It's never gonna get better. Let's stop deluding ourselves that it's gonna get better. It's not. It's always gonna be the same thing. My parents had a shitty marriage. I will have a shitty marriage. My children will have a shitty, right? My parents were alcoholics. I will be an alcoholic, and my kids will be, right? There is no way out. No salvation, right? This is very different from the Hebraic worldview, obviously. And, however, perfectly in line with the Egyptian worldview, right? This was the view of the Egyptians. They were pessimists, right? There is no salvation, no big intervention from the gods. You just live and you die. That's the story, right? For us. Okay, so good observation, Ahmad. We'll come back to this chapter 1 because he's also saying a few more things. He has a few grudges against Genesis 1, which we'll talk about. Okay, actually, let's go. Let's do it. Let's go further in chapter 1, and then I'll bring up some of what you guys said in chapter 2. Okay, to really understand what's happening in chapter 1, you need to know 4 Hebrew words. I'm going to teach them to you. So, vocabulary lesson. Ra'a, to see. Asa, to do. Natan, to give. And kol, all. Okay? That means all. All right. So these are 4 words that come up in chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes. These verbs, these words, to see, to do, to give, all, should remind you of another passage in the Bible, which we've studied, where they're all together, these words. The same configuration. To see, to do, right? Give, and all. Anybody know? We studied this text together. And I mentioned we would find it again in Ecclesiastes. Shall I help you? Okay, Granik, you want to try?
The creation account?
Yes,
Is
which
it okay?
chapter?
Oh, yeah, never mind. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Which chapter? Which one? One or two?
Oh, one. Yeah,
Okay.
one.
Show us. Show us these four words in chapter one. All of us go back to chapter one. Let's go to chapter one, Genesis 1, right? Let's find these words. Where do we see the first one, which is to see? And you can all pitch in, right? Granik, do you know already?
Oh, I think, yeah, C is in 3. I think he says it or 4. 4.
Verse 4, you mean?
Yeah, verse 4. Yeah,
Quote
1.
it, quote it to me, so I write it down.
Yeah, he says, God saw that the light was good.
And God saw, which comes up over and over again. This is ra'a, conjugated, obviously, right? All right, now to do. We see this in Genesis 1. And God saw what? Oh, it doesn't always say. Yeah, this one's trickier. Let me find it in my notes. I found it. Yes. Anybody else want to try and find the word to do? By the way, not to do, but to make. Asa also means make or do. So, oops. So you can find better, translations. To make. Where did we see this in Genesis 1?
In verse 7, it says, Vayas, and he did.
Very, very good. Yes. And God made. Let's check in the Hebrew if it's the right word. Where am I? Yes, same word. Excellent. Okay, so and God made. We have this several times, right? God made this, God made that. This is asa. Okay. To give. It's towards the end. Yes, I see it. Where is to give in the creation story in Genesis 1?
In 29, I have given.
Good. God said, see, I give you, blah, 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 right? Every seed bearing plant to eat, right? So this is Natan, right? And then finally, all?
And then in 31, he
Yes, and
says, and
God
God
saw
saw all.
all. Exactly. Okay, and God, okay, let me write this down. All, and this is kol. Okay, now, this is a technique, right? That we talked about. When you have repetitions between two passages, whether it's a sentence or a group of words, right? We did this already. We looked at two sentences. Let's see, where did we do that? When we studied Teshuka, right? We looked at the Song of Songs, same word. So we are interpreting one. So here we have the same thing. We have a grouping of words, right? In Ecclesiastes, and you can sense as he's grouping these words, he's alluding to Genesis 1. Everybody following me on the technical device of the author here? He's grouping the words, he's alluding to Genesis 1. Everybody good with that? Put your hand in the screen if you're seeing that this is what he's doing. But what is he telling us about Genesis 1 in the way that he groups these words? Look at what he's saying. I mean, let's see. Going back to Ecclesiastes, which I can't find anymore. Okay, here it is. Okay, so here he's going to say things like, let me look at, yes, look at verse 14. Okay, now we're going back to Ecclesiastes, same words, right? Verse 14, I have seen all that has been done, or all the deeds that have been done under the sun, right? I have seen all the deeds that have been done. And how does he rate the deeds? What does he add? How does he, is it good, like God would say, and God saw everything that he had done, and behold, it was good. Here we have, and I have seen everything that has been done, and behold, what is it here in this text, chapter verse 13, verse 14? What does he rate? How does he rate? What is this, Pierre-Antoine? Go ahead.
Teacher is basically saying like it's like chasing after the wind. Like it's all my translation, as you did say, like it's a bad translation, but they're all meaningless. Like they're all like breathless. Like it's really just it could be wiped away, not wiped away,
Exactly.
blown away, pretty much.
Instead of good, we have haven, right? Our word, our keyword, breath, right? So do you see how he's kind of rewriting, right, the creation story? And he's saying, oh, yeah, you guys learned in Hebrew school or whatever, Sunday school, that God saw that it was good. And me, I look and what has been done, and behold, I don't see good. I see breath, just something that is meant to just not last, right? Are you seeing what he's doing? How he's kind of retelling the creation story, but in a kind of twisted way. I think that's the best way to put it, right? What he's doing, he's retelling the creation story, but in a twisted way. Um, in a twisted way, right? What was right, and the main idea is right. You have this notion: God saw that it was good, and he sees that it is haven, right? That's in essence what's happening, right? That's what's going on. Okay, did everybody catch what he's doing here with the text? How he's retelling the story of Genesis 1? Put your hand on the screen if you're with me, right? Basically, we are entering a different cosmological territory with Ecclesiastes, right? Stagnation, futility, no way out, no redemption. Whereas in Genesis 1, we had this beautiful progression, right? Meaning that there's always something better around the corner. For Ecclesiastes, it's always going back to the same old, right? So we're entering his cosmological view, which is stagnant, circular. It's not good, it's futile, or it's breath, right? Okay, Granite, question.
Yeah, no, I just want to point out that I think it's even more stark because in that verse of in verse 14, he even uses the language of, I think in the Hebrew it's ra'ad ruach, like it's literally like he uses the word ra'a, which is the opposite of tov.
Oh my God, yes. Where was I? I saw that too. Where?
Yeah, I think it's in verse
Yeah.
14.
Yes, excellent. That's great. Yes. Where is it? Verse 14? Are you sure? I don't see it.
Yeah, at the end, I think so.
Okay.
ראיתי את כל המעשים תחת השמש, והנה כל הבל ורעד רעות רוח. Is that?
Beraut?
Oh, is that not the same word? That might not be the same word.
No, chasing of the wind. But you're right. There is. I saw it too. Not here, but guys, look for the word bad. It's there. I know I saw it. Wait. No. Yes, I remember seeing it too. And evil. It's with no. We have to look a little longer. But I thought I saw it too, Granick. That the word evil was used instead of good. Okay, let's hold that thought. Maybe you can look for it while I'm continue. Okay, good observation. Okay, so now on this backdrop, we can go to chapter 2, right? And see how is he going to find a way out, right? Some of you, I loved Sosa's observation. He's like, I sure hope the way out isn't God, right? How boring. Right? Sosa is like, oh, please let it not be God, right? This Jesus is the answer approach, right? Appreciated Sosa, right? Hopefully he's not going to fall back into come crashing back into the Father's house, right? Well, we have to see where he's going to go with this. Is there a way out, right? Right now, we are just in this dark, kind of stagnant, stuck state, right? Okay, so chapter 2, let's go to some of your comments before I go into the text. Well observed, Delmas, the repetition of I, right? We'll come to this. This is an important moment in chapter 2. I ventured, I might learn, I multiplied, I built, I will see all this, right? So I'm coming back to that. Good observation, right? Anytime there's a repetition, you guys should perk up, right? Let's see. Vargas, excellent. Notice the shift at chapter 2, verse 26. We're going to talk about this shift, right? Sosa might be disappointed. Morning, Sosa already. Now, I loved Kestenbaum and Goldstein complaining. So Goldstein, as usual, ruthless, right, with with our texts, and Kestenbaum also saying the same thing. Oh, here's this guy complaining about his wealth. Why doesn't he just give his wealth away instead of writing a book complaining about his wealth, right? I thought that was, I thought that was pretty good, right? In the sense that, yeah, Ecclesiastes. And you might wonder, right, if he's not so depressed precisely because he has no sense of generosity, right? Perhaps this is a really nice interpretation. Goldstein has found in 113 finally the word evil, which we were looking for. Let me look. Okay.
In my translation, it's translated as sorry.
Oh, unhappy business. That's it. That's it. That's it. Yes, yes, yes. It's okay. Let me find the Hebrew really quick. There it is. I had circled it in my text, and it is a evil business which God gave, right? Okay, so now we have them all, right? This is the last word, which is reversed of the Hebrew word tov, which means good, which is in the creation story, right? Here becomes ra, which means evil. This is Ecclesiastes 1. So now we have really found the anti-creation story, right? You know how you have the antichrist? Well, here you have the anti-creation story, right? He's taking the creation story and he's jumbling it up and making it all thorny, right? And making it all stagnant and evil and meaningless, right? Okay, good. Thank you, Goldstein. Okay, so excellent comments. I don't bring up all of your comments, right? But just the ones that work with what I'm about to say. That's why some of you don't get your comments. They're good, but I have an agenda, right, when I'm reading your comments. So I have to filter it there. Okay, so let's go to chapter 2, right? So he begins, right? And he is, of course, this is a big experiment he's doing, right? He's looking for wisdom. We know that Ecclesiastes was interested in wisdom from his youth, right? If you remember this poignant encounter with God that he has just as he's crowned a king, he's maybe a teenager, right? He's very young. And God comes to him in a dream and asks him, and this is true, this is told in the historical parts of the Hebrew Bible. God asks him, what do you like? God is kind of like a jinn, right? A genie from Aladdin, right? Here, what do you want? I'll give you anything you like. And Solomon gives the right answer, at least an answer which is pleasing to God. He says, I just want wisdom, right? I want wisdom to be able to lead these people. And God says, because you have asked for wisdom, I will give you everything else, right? Great tip for how to pray and get more than you asked for. Learn from him, right? So we know this is a man interested in wisdom, right? And so here we have still the same man, albeit much later in his life. This is not the same, right, innocence. We don't see the same innocence and the same candid faith that we have in his early life, but we still have the same man searching for wisdom and trying to find it through experiencing life, right? Solomon is an existentialist. He's the Nietzsche, right? He's our first Nietzsche. If you studied Nietzsche, you know that Nietzsche advises us, right, to really enter life, to not be afraid, to try everything, to experience the highs, to experience the lows, the sadness, to experience the depths and the heights, right? This is what Solomon is doing. He's penetrating into life and he's exploring and he's trying to find wisdom through experience, through living life, right? Which is a very Hebrew thing to do, right? Remember, in the Hebrews mindset, wisdom is found in the flesh, in the actions, in the living, not intellectually, right? So he tries several things, right? There's 3 attempts. There's, let's see, he tries to seek wisdom, right? We know that already. Then he tries pleasure, and then he tries success, right? If you read chapter 2, it's alternating between I sought wisdom, and it's always the same conclusion, and then futility, right? Hevel. Then I sought pleasure and I tried everything. I had, anything I wanted, anything my eyes desired, I took, right? Hevel, breath. Then I tried, and now he see him, right? Working hard, building, acquiring, developing, right? The whole city. So now he's trying to be like a success story, right? And at the end of this whole endeavor, right? This hard work, haven, right? So it feels like we're never going to get out, right? But as you get towards the end, there is a shift, complete turnaround. It's as though he woke up from a bad dream and he's seeing something, a glimpse, right? Then he goes back. But there is a moment, an epiphany, and Vargas was the one to find it. So Vargas, where did you find this shift in the discourse in Solomon? And what does it say? This was in your notes, Vargas. Are you there, Vargas? There you are.
I'm here.
Okay, remind us. So you wrote it down. You said, here, this was at the end of your reading assignment, the last paragraph of your reading assignment. You notice a shift in the discourse. Where is it?
Is it the chapter 2 verse 26?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's all go there. Chapter 2, verse 26. Oh, and by the way, just to go back to the creation story, in this, between the beginning of his search until the end, the word Hevel, guess how many times it occurs? How many times did the word good occur in the creation story? 7 times, both times, right? So again, another echo, kind of, right? Okay, so everything is Hevel, 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 right? All of his quests end with Hevel throughout chapter 2. You get to chapter 2, verse 26. I think it's even a little before. 24, right? 24, the actual shift happens. Are you sitting? Look at verse 24 and tell me if you see a shift, a complete new perspective opens up for the blink of an eye, right? And then closes back up. What is he glimpsing in chapter 2, 24 up until 26? Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
I think the shift is like the fact that even though everything is like hevel or like it's fleeting, you should still find satisfaction in what you do.
Okay, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. In the English, it doesn't come out, the contrast, but in the Hebrew, it just hits you like this.
But then when isolating 26 by itself, like it seems like he's turning to God, like saying that God gives all these things.
Yes, you're on the right track. But before that, in 24, he says a word twice. There's a word twice that comes up, which is the opposite of Hevel, from what we know so far, right? Remember, Hevel is in opposition with which word in the creation story?
Good.
Okay, good. So if you go in the English, doesn't come out. In the Hebrew, verse 24 comes up twice. I'll read it how it is literally, right? There is nothing good except for a man to eat and drink and to afford himself and to somebody help me with this, the other good to translate it, please. I'm not sure of that one. Where are my Hebrews?
Which one?
So thank you, Goldstein. Okay, you see in verse 24, Ein tov be'adam, right? There's nothing good for man except, right, to eat and to drink, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, et nafsho tov be'alamo. Tov be'alamo, what is be'alamo?
Find satisfaction.
Okay, so tov, what does the
I think
tov?
amalo is like his work or his toil or whatever.
Oh, so to find good in his work?
Yeah, in his toil or work.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Okay.
It's also et nafshotov, so it's like it's soul good, so it's deeper than that, than just good.
Et nafshoto means it's so good?
Nafshot
No, like his
is a soul. A
Oh, it's
nefesh is
soul.
a soul, so
Yes,
it's like
Very good. And it's good for the soul? I'm not getting this translation. Translate this, please. Translate me the whole verse 24 with the word good coming out so we can all hear it. Go ahead.
I have the King James version. It says nothing is better than man's.
I don't want the King James version.
Oh, okay, fine.
Because
Fine.
I don't want the
You
King
want
James
the
version. It doesn't
you
have
want the
the
good
word
news?
good, which we need to see the contrast with Hevel, right? So the word good is only, I haven't seen it in translation except in Hebrew. So Goldstein, please translate verse 24 for us, highlighting the word good so we can hear it. You'll do a better job than me.
I can read what my English translation says. Is it not good for man that he eats and drinks and shows his soul satisfaction in his labor? And they're translating good as satisfaction here.
Okay, and finds good in his labor. So there's nothing.
Yeah.
So okay, so we have, so bottom line, in this verse 24, we have the word good comes up twice instead of haven. Are you seeing the contrast and the shock and the shift? Are you seeing that? Put your hand in the screen if you're following, right? So all of a sudden he shifts from his, usual everything is havel, everything is havel, everything is havel, to all of a sudden good, good, right? Boom. Okay, so the author clearly now is pivoting, right? Or the writer, right, is pivoting. And then we have to understand then why he pivots, right? So I want to go back with you to the observation that Delmas made, right? What is the difference, right? Is the same man, is the same experience. He's eating, he's drinking, he's working in verse 24, right? There's the word eating, drinking, and working. Yet now, instead of being haven, it's good. What changed? That's the question, okay? Let me write it down here in the chat, right? Verse 24, we have the same eating, drinking, and working, which before was all rated as Hevel, all of a sudden it is rated as good. So the question, right, is what changed? What shifted? What is the difference? What is the difference between, or in other words, let me put it this way, what makes the difference between seeing everything as Hevel and seeing everything as good? What can make the difference, right? So King, you're right. Perspective, something shifted. So we have to figure out what shifted. Okay, Aline, and there's indication. Yes, Aline, give it a try.
He starts asking a lot of questions. Like it starts off like with a few, but there's like a lot more near 24. So he starts like, I guess he dwells in this like hamster ball, but then he starts questioning, oh, how can I break out? How can I break out? And then finally he starts asking more and more and more and more, and then he finally has this glimpse.
I like what you're saying, that it's intensifying, right? That's a nice, you're right. It's like he starts out kind of relaxed, wisdom, chilling, right? Eating and drinking, and then it gets more and more intense. You have this accumulation of questions, and then all of a sudden, breakthrough, it's all good, right? As though all of a sudden it's like he has, you know how, you're in an airplane and you're in the clouds, and all of a sudden, and you're like struggling in the clouds, and all of a sudden, poof, you appear and it's the sun. This is what it looks like, right? He's in a rocky kind of takeoff, right? He takes off smoothly, then it's rocky, it intensifies, the plane is about to explode, and paf, he finds himself stillness, light, everything is good. So what happened? So I get it, there is an intensification, maybe that's the reason. Delmas, you would be able to answer this question. Let's look at the Solomon before and the Solomon now. There is a shift in his psychology, which allows him to see everything as good. Who is the Solomon in chapter 2, verse 4, 5, 6, Delmas? How would you describe this Solomon? It's what you mentioned, what I mentioned when I mentioned you.
Yeah, he seems to be more, well, he seems to, I guess what I wrote was he was using the word I a lot more often, and he focuses on that a lot more.
Okay, yes. Now look at 24. Who is the subject? How has that shifted? Do you see the shift? While you think, I'll go back with the class to where you were, right? Take a look at chapter 2, verse 4. I mean, just look at how it repeats, right? Chapter 2, verse 3. I ventured. I multiplied, I built, I planted, I laid, I constructed, I bought, I acquired, I amassed, I did all this, I was doing this and that and this and that. What's this sense you're getting from this man? And then of course, the accumulation of the word acquire. I won't get into that. Right? So here he is, building, amassing, buying. What's is it yin or yang? If you want to describe in terms of energy, what's the energy? Yin or yang? I'm building, I'm acquiring, I'm purchasing, I'm doing, I'm gaining, I'm yang, yes, it's very active, right? He's doing, he's making it happen, right? He's moving forward in life. He has a goal. He's acquiring, possessing. It's very there's a lot of grasping, control, mastery, right? This is a yang, right? He is the one taking, right? If you look, in fact, you have it when he's building, planting, buying, you have the sense of someone who is striving. There is an effort, there is a labor, the subject is in control here, right? And he's making his life happen. And as long as he's in that mode of being, what's the result? According to him, not me. You can put in the chat, how does he define the result? Haven, right? Very good. Until verse 24, where there's a shift. The I is at rest. Where does he get now? The work, the enjoyment, the food. Where is that coming from now? Is it coming from his efforts or coming from another place? Pierre Antoine.
I was about to say it's very like God focused compared to verses 4 through 6, because he's saying like the enjoyment, the work, the eating, the drinking, it comes from God. Like that satisfaction, the goodness comes from God, which is why it's not fleeting. So like it's a very like what is it? Why can I say now? Yang energy.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
You're shifting, and this is the key, from an attitude of striving to an attitude of receiving, right? Let me write this in the chat. The shift is from striving to receiving. In our text, in verse 24, we have the word to give 3 times, right? 3 times it occurs in the Hebrew, the word natan, right? So there's an emphasis here between striving and receiving a gift, right? And of course, the subject of the gift is God, right? So now this doesn't last long. It closes back up and he goes back to Hevel right after this, right? But this is, I want you to see how this man's brain works, right? Depression, glimpse, depression, glimpse, right? Throughout the text, he has these epiphanies and then it closes back, right? Closes back up back to the haven, right? Which we know is not such a bad thing, neither, right? But so here we have this moment, and I know Sosa probably right now, Sosa, you're bitterly disappointed, correct? I can't see you very well in your picture, but so I wanna elaborate a little bit on this notion of a gift from God, right? Because now it seems to Sosa's bitter disappointment that the answer is God. And this cannot be in the book of Ecclesiastes, right? Ecclesiastes is not, this is not a religious book. So we cannot expect, I mean, we can, this would be the pshat, right? The upper layer. You can say, yes, God is the answer, sure. But we know this book is deeper, more complex. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit on the contrast. What is really important here is not so much the shift from me to God, but from striving to receiving, right? That's the shift, right? The hand of God could just be an idiomatic expression to mean receive from the universe, right? It doesn't even, it could, right? I don't want to denounce the religious interpretation. It works too. Yes, God is the origin of all of our, true good. God is the origin of anything that makes us truly happy. You can have this religious interpretation, but you can go deeper into the layers of the text and simply see there the expression from the hand of God being an idiomatic expression, meaning gift from the universe, right? The shift that is important, in my view, if we're going to keep a secular mindset when we read this text, is the shift from striving to receiving, from yang to yin, right? What the author is realizing here is that true happiness, you cannot make it happen. You can only receive it. That's the illumination. Let me say that in the chat, right? What Ecclesiastes is realizing here in a moment of illumination, right, is that true happiness, right, cannot be striven for. You can't make it happen. You can only receive it. And this is a realization which you don't have to be a religious person to have, right? In other words, here you are in the world. You don't even need a God to be able to do this, right? This is me talking to Sosa, right? You don't even need a God to be able to do this. What is your attitude towards life? Are you striving to possess, to grasp? Are you hanging on for dear life, trying to control everything? Or are you in a position of receptivity and you receive everything as a gift, right? And we'll see that sometimes the gift is painful in chapter 3, right? But this is the difference. Yes, Ahmad, excellent. From doing to being, from yang to yin, from grasping, controlling, to surrendering and letting go. This is a philosophical shift. This is not a religious shift. This is a shift in your existentialist stance, positioning towards the world, right? What is my attitude towards the world? Is the world an unsafe place that I have to control everything? If I am like this, Havel, says Solomon, you won't get anywhere. That's what he's telling you, right? As long as you think that the world is unsafe and that you have to control everything, you're not going to get anywhere. I'm giving you an example, right? Let's imagine a relationship which is going to hell, right? We all go through these relationships, whether it's with your child or a parent, and here you are trying to control. Where's that relationship going to end up? Is it going to end good? Is it going to end well, this story? No, right? Any type of controlling attitude towards life, says Solomon, is going to backfire. You can't control life, right? You can't control the universe. You cannot control other people. You can't control your fate, right? But you can receive. You can surrender. And what he's saying is when you shift from an attitude of mastery and control to an attitude of surrender and receptivity, you will experience life as good and not as just a breath that you don't know where it's going next, right? This is where you will really taste life. This is where you will really be nourished by life. It's a risk because we want to be in control, but what Solomon is saying is that the attitude of control will get you nowhere. It's the attitude of surrender, of receptivity to life, to all of life. We're going to talk about this in chapter 3, not just the happy moments. Everything coming your way, we're going to see, is a gift. And this attitude of profound receptivity is how you will truly enter and penetrate into the mystery of life and really taste the very flesh and marrow of life, right? Am I making sense? Put your hand in the screen if you're with me. Okay, great. So yes, make sure you see the 2 layers of interpretation, right? Remember, we were talking about there are many layers. There's the surface level, right? Which I called the pshat, right? Make sure you remember these expressions. And then there's deeper levels, right? Which I call the drash. The pshat, you can have a religious reading if you want. Life is meaningless as long as you're trying to make it happen. The moment you have faith in God, you're going to end up in a good place, right? If you, instead of trying to make it happen by yourself, you receive your happiness from God, you can be, so yes, you can have this religious interpretation, but you can go deeper and you can simply see it as an existentialist shift towards life. If you want to truly experience life, stop trying to control it. Receive everything that comes your way and you will genuinely have lived. And I think this is really the layer where Solomon is, right? I would read the hand of God as idiomatic expression, but it could be he had a vision. He's like that, right? Remember, Solomon was in his youth deeply religious, right? He is somebody who had an extraordinary intimacy with God, perhaps even closer than his own father David had with God. This is, I mean, God comes to him and tells him what, I don't see God coming to David ever, right? In a dream. This is a very deep connection he has with God. So yes, it can be that something in him awakens and then closes back up, of course, as we can see in the last sentence. This too is Havel and chasing after the wind, right? So he finishes with that, right? Olivera, question.
I have heard this concept of not trying to control and allow and stuff. And my very simple mind is always at the surface level, trying to imagine that, like, if I don't do my homework, if I don't send my stuff and I just be, is not going to work out in my favor. You know, like, as I think of the practical matters, as I am like a young person, like trying to have a career, how is that practical, or is just like on a deeper level that it's like a within the that I can manifest this letting go? Because like I as I think about it, I'm like how it manifests on one's life. I'm not
Yes, good question, good question. So notice he doesn't say don't work, right? Verse 24, food, drink, and work. Right, so work is important, but it's how you work. Are you working, I have to make it, or are you working and then releasing? I did my part, now let me see what comes my way, right? I applied to the colleges, now let me wait, right? I went on 5 dating sites, now let me wait, right? I had this conversation, I apologize, now let me wait, right? So this is, you're still doing, but you're doing in a state of surrender. And you're doing knowing that part of the work is not, or part of the result is not in your hands, right? It's always a grace, right? You apply for a job, you do your part, you end up with a magnificent job. You can't help but think that part of it was out of your control and is a gift, right? Or you try to work on yourself, you try to be a good person, and you meet this amazing, right, partner, life partner, right? Yeah, you did your part, but you can't help but think, oh my God, this is so undeserved, right? I didn't expect that much, right? So we do our part, but we know that the result is not in our hands, and that often the result is a grace, is a gift, is more than what we worked for. Does that make sense, Olivera? That's the attitude, right? So of course we work, yes. Pierre-Antoine, you had something to say.
Yeah. So like, do you think like Solomon or like the speaker within Ecclesiastes, do you think like they would think like in today's like modern world, like we're all about like the yang aspect, or like we're all about striving, or like do you think like you would be criticized because he also has this mindset? So like he can't really criticize us, but do you think because of this like epiphany he had, he would? Or,
Yeah,
like,
he would not criticize because he's been there too, right? And he's kind
yeah,
of very Western too, but he would say, look, ultimately, if you stay in this yang, you're not gonna get very far, right? You're gonna, like I think Ahmad is saying, you're gonna burn out. Or I'm paraphrasing what he said, right? So he's saying basically we need to accept, and this is part of the wisdom of Hevel, by the way. To accept that we are Hevel is to accept that we are powerless, that we are fragile, that we don't have it all together, right? And
yeah,
that yes, we do our part, but everything that comes our way is still so much more than what we worked for, right? That's kind of
yeah,
a gift, right? So he would simply say, we need to realize that all of our efforts are not enough. Never, never. Your efforts are never enough to help raise your child or help mend this marriage or help get this job, right? It's never enough. Life always gives us more than what we expect or deserve, right?
yeah.
And so in that sense, he would say, open yourself up to grace, surrender, do your part, but then surrender and wait what life will bring into your existence, right? Makes sense, Pierre-Antoine? Okay, Ram, you have a question too. Go ahead.
Well, it wasn't like a question, but I was just going to make a reference. like an example that I experience is sometimes, you know, you want something that sometimes you want, like, let's say, give an example of, you see something that you want, and then you're just so obsessed with wanting it that, you know, you forget everything else around you. Then you just take a step back and you realize, you know what, do I really want this, or do I really need this? You know, it's just like a simple thing like him, you know, it's like he's worked so hard, he's achieved all these, you know, like earthly pleasures, you know, like he mentioned about having the house with the pool and whatnot, but yet he's not happy. Yeah.
Not for the pool,
So,
but it works.
yeah, right. So it's just sometimes it's just something that human naturally, because I can just vouch for that, because sometimes I'm so obsessed with getting what I want that I kind of forget myself sometime, and it's just that overpowers me. And I'm sure a lot of people can at
Yeah.
least, you know.
And going further, when you become obsessed with something, you lose it, right? Anytime you want something too much and you're trying to make it happen, it's gonna dissolve. Heaven, it will just dissolve, right? So, and especially, right, in relationships, I would want to emphasize this, right? If you try too hard to get someone to like you or to, attract, it's heaven, it will just dissolve, right? So there is an amount of work, and then there is an amount of receiving what comes your way or not, right? We'll see in chapter 3, there's an art of receiving life, right? It's not easy to receive all of what life has in store for us, right? But that's the idea, right? The obsessive approach where you think you're in control and you have to do everything that you can and work overtime and, sacrifice your family and so forth. Heaven, where are you going to get? Nowhere, right? So that's why he's saying we have to understand life is gift, and we need to shift our stance if we're really going to be able to receive the gifts of life. As long as you're striving, you can't receive. You have to stop, surrender, open, and then life can begin pouring itself into you, right? Into your existence, right? And we often miss the most beautiful gifts of life because we're busy trying to make them happen, right? That's the idea here. Excellent. So you guys I think you're really getting this, right? Any other questions before we conclude? I was going to say a couple more things, but I think we can stop there for now. Kirstenbaum, go ahead.
It's just super unrelated. In terms of those who got an extension, do you know when we'll be able to get our test back? Sorry to like.
It's okay. I grade on the weekend, so you'll get your results on the weekend.
Fine, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Good. Anybody else before we conclude? Okay. So next, yes.
Sorry. I'm just gonna try to get your tests for you out in a day or two.
Yes. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So, where was I? Yes. So next time, definitely chapter 3. Just read from chapter 3 to chapter 6, but I will focus on chapter 3. So 3 to 6 for next time, with a focus on chapter 3. This is where we will go deeper in the art of receiving, right? By the way,
is that the reading assignment?
Yes, that's so you combine chapter 3 and 6 in one reading assignment, right? Delmas, you did 2, just one is enough, right? I can't help but see connections between Ecclesiastes and Stoicism, right? If you're familiar with Epictetus, and this is much later, right? This is much later than when Ecclesiastes was written, but there are deep connections between the Stoic view that we ought to tune into the intelligence of life and just accept what life brings us, right? And align ourselves with where life has put us, right? This attitude, right, of surrender to life, which is very vibrant in Stoic philosophy, and which you find earlier in Chinese philosophy, right? I still haven't found, granted, the connection between Egypt and the East. But I'm just making thematic connections, right? The Taoist philosophy is also a philosophy of alignment, of receptivity. So here we do have this same similar idea. And you know, to be honest, this is the Hebrew part of Solomon. So maybe Hebrew thought is not so far away from this Eastern, right? Maybe it's the Hebrew connection. But I haven't seen, well, yeah, it works. It works in the Hebraic. This is a different view than trying to, right? It's a much more surrendered receptivity, but it fits very well in the Hebrew framework also. So yeah, so connections with Stoicism, connections also with Taoism in China, which is much earlier. You have the same notion of surrender. In Taoism, in Taoist philosophy, you have the concept of action without action, which is basically an action which, one of the definitions of this concept of action without action, or Wu Wei, I don't know if you've heard this, if you're in martial arts, you know what I'm talking about. This is the action that releases control, right, over the result. You do your part and then you let go. If you read the Tao Te Ching, right, from Taoist philosophy, you have this idea, right, of acting without acting, which is to do your part and then surrender and let go and let the result offer itself to you, right, rather than going as far as controlling also the result, right? So we have, so this is what Solomon is grasping is an idea which is also circulating in other parts of the philosophical world. So Ahmed, can you explain this with Buddhism? It's interesting.
I think this is in Zen Buddhism, where they focus on trying to awaken the witness within the soul. So you detach from your circumstances and pretend as if it's happening to somebody else. You don't identify with yourself. You take a back seat and just watch the show.
Yes, almost. Although Solomon is very engaged, right? He's a Hebrew, right? So he's never so I get it what you're saying, to witness in the sense as to not control, but at the same time, where Solomon is Hebrew and not Asian or Eastern, is that he is really wanting to eat life, right? He is fully present and engaged, right, with the living, in a way that this philosophy of detachment that you find in the East, you cannot connect the detachment of the East with Solomon, who is entirely trying to penetrate into life, right? But I get it. The witness, I think that's close. Yes, this idea of to witness what is happening rather than controlling and being an agent, right? I think that would work. So yeah, interesting connections. I just, these are your future PhD dissertations, of course. I'm hoping some of you will take up Ecclesiastes in the East. Williams, you have a quick question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're no longer going by syllabus. We're just going to go by what you say every time out of
Yeah,
after.
you know, yeah. Yeah, I repent already putting this fake schedule in the announcements, not working. So we're just, because it's not only my fault. I want to defend myself, because even if I prepare, the flow of the class sometimes goes slower, faster. So anyways, I have to change because I want to be more in tune with the flow of the class. So this is an unusual class compared to what I usually do, where I have a strict schedule, because I'm also working with you on the text, right? If you notice, we're working on this text together, so I have to sometimes slow down, spend more time with what you guys are saying, and so it makes it very fluid. And so yes, there cannot be Sosa. I'm so sorry if you're still there. Sosa disappears always towards the end. He's gone. But Sosa, if you listen to the recording, I apologize. This is how it will be until the end. Okay, guys, I'm gonna stop the recording.